Eldigan, or Eltoshun, if we're going to get katakana about it, is a decently strong MC option in the current game. Hell, he was arguably the premier choice for his color when his second line of cards released back in set 12. His main promotion is a 5-cost 4-promote base 70 with 3 different effects. The first is that you can take an extra bond phase before your deployment phase once per turn. Next, he gains plus 10 power as long as there's an Eldigan in your bond area. And finally, once per turn, he can deploy a yellow cavalry unit from the bond area at no cost as long as there are at least 2 cards named Eldigan in your bond area. Eldigan is a very high-risk, high-reward MC option that I've found either tempos into a powerful field or burns out and gets squashed if he sets up poorly. There are a lot of really strong cavalry units under yellow, but the majority of them have base 10 for their support cost, meaning it's hard to really get creative with his toolbox of units outside of some already strong staples. Another major downside is that he requires copies of himself in the bond area, a trait shared by a few different yellow MC units, which means you'll either need to run more than the base 8 to 10 copies of him to make sure you have proper setup, or have cards that let you search him out and put him in the bond area from the deck. That said, his mid-promotions all work really well as bonds, and can even help guarantee he gets his promotion off on turn 4 if need be. Also, having a bunch of skills that both accelerate bonds and deploy without flipping bonds leaves lots of room to play with other high-cost effects that other yellow MCs might not have the luxury of using. The double bond is really just a way to make sure he gets his deploy skill off, but being able to hit 6 bonds on turn 5 activates a lot of good cards that have to reach a certain threshold before they can use their best skills. As far as his base and Inbetweens go, you can't go wrong with the rest of his set 12 lineup. They're all constructed to work together and help him reach his final promotion and endgames quickly. His 1 cost gains plus 20 on the player's turn as long as there's an Eldigan in the bond area, and his 3 cost gains plus 10 on both players' turns as long as there are at least 3 face-up bonds in the bond area. His mid-promotion also comes with a bond skill that lets the player discard a card and add an Eldigan in the retreat to their hand when it's played. This combos really nicely with his final promotion since you can bond the 3 cost on your 4th turn and then get back the 5 cost and immediately class change. His set 19 and promo variants all make good in-betweens for different reasons. I prefer the promo though since it has a bond skill that lets you return a bond to hand, including itself. It's also a nice way to recycle things like Lachesis or Seliph if you find yourself short on bonds or cards. Speaking of Lachesis, she's kind of a 4 of stable for Eldigan, and will commonly be a base 90 attacker for him since she has an ability that gives her plus 10 for every copy of a card in your bond area that shares a name with your main character. You can play her into the bond area, get a draw off her skill, and then deploy her with Eldigan's Cross Knight's ability to put pressure onto your opponent. Her most recent promo card is also pretty good, and will commonly be a base 70 that can avoid effect destruction, but I think the draw is a little bit better in this case, and deck space will be kind of tight. But if you want a deck that's more themed around Eldigan's character from the game, couldn't hurt yourself to run 2 or 3 copies of it. Both versions are also cavalry units with a 20 support, something Eldigan desperately needs, since cavalry really don't have that many good support options and Eldigan needs everything he can to make sure he gets over stronger units. Set 8 Seliph is also pretty important. His 1 cost has a bond skill that lets him copy the name of your main character while he's in the bond area. It gives you 4 extra copies of Eldigan without the awkward base 10 support, or having to give up a potential future dodge. He also has a double breaker support skill, so he's not too shabby when pulled on offense either. Outside of these 2, there aren't many cards I would say are required for Eldigan to operate, but there are plenty of other important cavalry units you'll want to consider using. First up are Sigurd, Seliph, and Leif. All have 20 support cavalry promotions that are exceptionally strong. Sigurd gives a bonus when attacking an enemy main character and can deploy a unit from the bond area after you hit 6 bonds. Leif can give a board-wide boost to all of your units, and Seliph can give a board-wide boost to all of your units as long as you have 3 or more face-up yellow bonds. Something that's not too hard for Eldigan to do since he's going to at least almost always need 2. I'm also a fan of units like Azazel and Reinhardt. Azazel turns into a base 70 mage that lets you cycle through your deck, and Reinhardt can clear out a whole field of enemies as long as you happen to still have your hand. He also lets you draw 2 cards if his attack gets high enough, but that's more of a bonus than a goal in most games. Other cards that make some decent 1 or 2-ofs are Midir for anti-flyers, Quan for mass movement, and Ethelyn to protect your board against effect wipes. Some non-cavalry units to consider are Julia and Diardre. Both have good 1 costs since they can help you cycle through and fix bonds when they're played, but I find Diardre tends to be the stronger of the 2 in this case. Julia has the better high-cost promotion unit though, since she can grab cards from the top of the deck to bond for Eldigan to deploy. If you don't really like your options, you can just send 3 of them away and put 3 new cards in. Overall, while I find Eldigan to be very strong, I think he falters against a lot of the current stronger decks. His final promotion being a 4 cost can be pretty detrimental when going second, since it's harder for him to stabilize early. He also has to give up potential dodges to make his skills live. Once those skills are live though, he can easily pump out large fields and recover every turn. He won't hit complete blowouts like Leaf can, but Leaf also has a harder time stabilizing if his mass deploy is either stalled or removed. So, it's okay if Eldigan does not close out a game on a specific turn because he can continually redo the same turn over and over as long as your hand permits it. His early game is also pretty restrictive since you have to spend a lot of time setting up your bonds specifically for your turn 4, and that requires at least 2 copies of himself so he can use Cross Knights as early as possible. He has a major weakness to bond disruption as well that puts him at risk against MCs like Ishtar or decks that splash cards that punish your bonds such as Nyx, Null, or Julius. But if you're looking for a straightforward tempo-ish MC that has a few unique splash options, then Eldigan is worth giving a try.